Easy guys, Dom here from Cringy Dad Gaming. So in this video we're taking a look at my Demolisher build for the game Aliens Fireteam Elite. Now to be honest with you, there's no real right or wrong way to set up a build. It is just purely based on what your character or your playstyle, what you want it to do in the game. For me, I want to have maximum damage pretty much. I want to be a devastating colonial marine, and that's pretty much what this build is about, and also what this character class is about really, which is why it's called the Demolisher. You know, for those of you who've not used it yet, you can use big heavy weapons such as heavy flamethrowers, smart guns and rocket launchers stroke grenade launchers, but you also have a grenade launcher ability on your shoulder and also a kind of concussive blast wave that you can use, which is really good if you're getting surrounded by aliens, with a backup weapon of a pulse rifle. So this class is pretty solid, if I'm honest, especially when you're coming up against harder enemies in some of the levels. So let's jump in and have a look at my build. So we'll start with the pulse rifle, which is a pretty good all-round weapon really. It's pretty good close, medium and potentially long range, depending on which optic you've got on it. But at the moment, the muzzle I'm using on this is the precision break, which gives you an additional weak point damage boost by 20%. So when you're hitting enemy weak points, you're going to get additional damage, but it also increases the effective range of the rifle by 30% as well. And obviously you can see down here, the range is pretty good. It only starts falling off when you kind of get into probably about, I'd say 80 or 90 meters. So it's pretty good. We're also then running the drum magazine for the additional magazine capacity of 20%. And I think it's around 72 rounds. I say I think, it does actually show you here on the pulse rifle, doesn't it, how many rounds it's got in it. Duh. But for me, it also increases the max ammo capacity by 20%, which is also really important. So you tend to find that you're not running out of ammo between ammo crates in the missions. So that's really good. And there's also a bonus of 25% reload speed when the magazine is empty, which is really handy. I'm running hybrid optics at the moment. Sometimes I do switch between these depending on what level I'm playing, because you will get a 50% zoom magnification and sometimes that's a little bit too much. So it just kind of depends really. But the reason why I kind of keep that on there for this rifle is because it comes in real handy at taking out some of the more annoying enemies such as the spitters, which kind of tend to usually hide away at distance and spit at you. With the 50% zoom magnification and the fact that it does a plus 10% damage when you're standing still, means it's actually quite good for taking out those enemies that are further away, including some of the synthetic enemies you get on some of the levels as well, like some of the snipers that can sometimes be quite far away. And with the extra zoom magnification as well, it kind of almost turns this into a medium to long range weapon. But then my main weapon, which I'm using mostly through the missions, is the smart gun, which is an absolute badass gun. This thing is just amazing. If you've not used the smart gun yet, you've got to use it. It's just so much fun. We are running the extended flash hider on this, not only because it increases the effective range by 25%, but it also triggers a small thermal explosion on weak points of enemies when you hit them, but also then does a 5% hit damage within a 2.5 meter radius. So that kind of means that any enemies that are stood next to each other or quite close, you're going to get a kind of splash damage effect as well, which is quite good. And that does trigger quite a lot. You'll kind of notice it when it triggers because it does cause like mini explosions on the enemies. It's so cool. The barrel here, we're using the polygonal rifling, which is quite good. It gives you a 20% fire rate increase, which on the smart gun is great. I mean, the smart gun's already got a really fast fire rate, but that then gives you a 50% chance on hit that enemies take an additional 10% damage for 5 seconds. You can do a lot of damage in 5 seconds with this weapon, and the fact that you got a 50% chance, this is triggering quite often. It does have a little bit of a cooldown, 15 seconds between when that's going to potentially hit, but 15 seconds isn't that long when you're playing the game, trust me. And then the armature is deep railed, which increases the reload speed by 30% and the maximum ammo by 20%. That's really important for me personally. I want a faster reload and I want to carry extra ammunition with me. And again, with the smart gun, I tend to find even if I'm really rinsing it through sections of a mission, I can still have ammo in it between finding the next ammo crate. So that works quite well for me. Next, we'll look at the Demolisher perks that I'm running. And I've managed to completely fill my Demolisher grid, which means I've utilised all the spaces here. The combat rating at the moment of 160. We'll start from left and move to right and talk about what I'm using and why. So micro rockets for me is one of the best tools for the Demolisher, and just, well, one of the best tools really that I've kind of come across so far with my playstyle, because it will fire those 3 rockets from your shoulder, and it's great for not only large groups of enemies but also the big heavy enemies such as the drones and things like that. And I'll talk about how I use this in a minute, but we'll talk about what I've got attached to it and why I'm using these attached perks. So the first one at the top is rapid deployment, which increases the recharge speed of the ability by 20%. So once I've used the ability, I'm going to have a shorter time frame before I can use it again, which is great because I get to use it more often, and that can come in real handy when you're getting in some of those really intense firefights with the aliens and they're pretty much swarming you. Next, linked to micro rockets is loud and clear, which increases the attached ability's damage dealt by 20% and causes it to generate an additional stack of clear the room. So clear the room here, once you start stacking that up, is going to increase gun damage by 2.5% and lasts for 15 seconds. So that means after I've used my micro rockets on an enemy, not only have I dealt an extra 20% damage to it with this attached, but I'm also then going to do more damage with my weapon while I'm shooting at it for 15 seconds, which is great. I've also got another additional damage increase, which is force multiplier, and that increases the damage of the ability by an additional 22%. Then I've got the other force multiplier attached to it, which increases the damage of that ability by 18%, and then increase the radius of the attached ability by 40%. So as you can see, all these are linked to the micro rockets. Not only am I getting the cooldown timer reduced, but I'm also doing increased damage at larger radius. And where this ability really comes into effect is when you use Blast Wave with it. Linked to Blast Wave, I've got Down and Out, which means you deal an extra 20% damage to enemies that are stunned or knocked. So say I've got a heavy enemy running at me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use Blast Wave when it's close enough to cause it to be stunned and knocked down. Then I'm going to fire my micro rockets at it. It's going to do an additional 20% damage to them because they're knocked. But it's also going to do all these increased damages that I've got here linked to the micro rockets. And it works really, really well. I tend to find that once you start pumping those bullets into those enemies, once you've done that, it's pretty much game over, man, for those guys. You know what I mean? They're pretty much gone. They're dead. Especially with your other teammates shooting at them as well. You can get these heavier enemies down quite quickly without taking any damage for them. I am then using Ready and Able as well, which means you can break out of stuns 25% faster and you're going to be stumbled less. So after being stumbled once, you're then immune to stumbles for a longer period of time. So rather than kind of getting hit left, right and centre when you've got, say, a swarm of aliens on you, you're only going to get stumbled once and then you're not going to be stumbled again. But this also comes in handy for being able to obviously break out of grapples when you're grabbed by certain alien types. I'm also using Rough and Tumble here, which is a reduction in the area of effect attacks that get dealt to you by 50%. So things like acid spitters, the exploding acid aliens, things like fire damage from things like the grenades that are thrown by some of the synthetic enemies. So next up is Rampage, which means killing an enemy grants a stack of Rampage, and at 25 stacks your fire rate, reload speed and movement speed are greatly increased. That's really good, and really for me it's more about the fire rate with this, because when you're using the smart gun and you're taking down those enemies, you're going to find that stack's going to reach quite high quite quickly, and then your fire rate's going to increase, which is also going to kill enemies a lot quicker. And then last but not least, we've got these two perks here, which is increase the max ammo of heavy weapons by 20% and their reload speed by 15%. So my smart gun's going to have additional ammunition, which is really handy. That links in nicely to the attachments I've got on the weapon. But then this one here is, for me, one of the nice little bonuses or sugar coatings that I've got on my smart gun. The increase the radius of heavy weapons by 15% I think is more to do with things like the heavy grenade launcher and the flamethrower and things like that. But for me, this is the damage of the heavy weapon by 10%. So it means my smart gun's doing an extra 10% damage. And if I just show you some stats from the last game that I played, you can kind of see that not only have I got an awful lot of kills because of how fast I'm killing the aliens, but the damage that I've dealt has been pretty decent. So there you go, guys. That's my Demolisher build at this point. I mean, obviously I could tweak it more depending on how I'm playing the game, and I might come up with a slightly different structure, but this just kind of shows you how my build is working for me at the moment, and it's working pretty well, I have to say. So don't forget to share your builds in the comments below. Let me know what's working for you and what you like in terms of the different loadout kits that you can use. So just watch this space for more Aliens Fireteam Elite. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Stay frosty, watch those corners, and I'll catch you guys on another video. Thanks for watching.